You reminded me who I used to be, Josh, and because of that, I'm learning how to be her again. Not for anyone else, but for me. I read her letter again, hands trembling. I never meant to fall for her. She was my best friend's mom. Older, untouchable, safe. Until that one night in the kitchen when everything shifted. When she whispered, "Tom's home early," and the air between us turned electric. We never kissed. We never crossed the line. But emotionally, we were already lost. She was just my best friend's mom. But that one afternoon changed everything. It was one of those languid Saturday afternoons when time seemed to stretch and everything moved at a gentle pace. As I lounged at home, idly scrolling through my phone, my gaze fell upon a missed call from Tom. He had forgotten his headphones at my place the previous night after our gathering, and it seemed he was eager to retrieve them. And I considered it to be of little consequence. I took them from the table and sent him a message to let him know I was on my way to deliver them. Tom's residence lay within a brief journey, merely a quick drive through the heart of town. I was aware that his mother, Rachel, was often present, yet she typically retreated to her room or maintained her distance. I had never given her much thought beyond recognizing her as an attractive woman for her age. She was in her early 40s, yet she appeared hardly older than that. Yet, to me, she remained simply Tom's mother, nothing beyond that. As my knuckles rapped against the door, I found myself unprepared for the moment she swung it wide open. Yet there she stood. She opened the door just after a shower, still drying her hair with a towel. Her expression was one of surprise, yet there was no hint of embarrassment. My gaze wandered aimlessly, uncertain of where to settle. My gaze swiftly averted from her, yet the palpable awkwardness lingered in the atmosphere. "Hello, Josh," she said, her smile brightening the room. "Tom's away for a bit. What brings you here?" I hesitated for a moment before raising the headphones in my hand. "I have merely arrived to leave these behind. I hadn't anticipated that you'd be occupied." Rachel chuckled gently, tucking a damp lock of hair behind her ear. "Oh, I have plenty of time." Emerging from the embrace of warm water, I find myself refreshed and renewed. "Would you like to step inside for a while?" With a moment of doubt lingering in my mind, I crossed the threshold regardless. It wasn't as if she were an unfamiliar face. It simply felt distinct. I had always perceived her as a composed, nurturing presence, never as someone who could evoke an unexpected sense of attraction within me. We settled into the living room, and she graciously offered me a drink. The dialogue began with a light-hearted tone, yet as our exchange deepened, I found her revealing thoughts and feelings that took me by surprise. We engaged in a conversation about life, exploring her feelings regarding the changes unfolding around her and delving into her occasional sense of isolation. Though she found herself amidst a crowd, for a fleeting instant, it seemed as if the conversation had drifted far from her identity as Tom's mother. It was simply the two of us engaged in a genuine dialogue. It was evident that she was truly engaged in my words. In that instant, she began to reveal herself to me in an entirely new way. She was more than merely the woman who nurtured Tom. There was a depth to her that beckoned exploration. Once more, a smile graced her lips. A gentle, nearly elusive smile. "You've matured remarkably, Josh. It's somewhat difficult to fathom. I still recall the days when you were a small child, darting about with Tom." Uncertain of how to reply, I merely nodded in acknowledgement. An unspoken tension lingered in the atmosphere that surrounded us. A presence felt, yet left unsaid. A palpable sensation coursed through me. The bond, the delicate strain, yet I found myself uncertain of its significance. What I felt was a strong reluctance to depart just yet. She rose to her feet and made her way to the kitchen, and I trailed behind her. As she glided past, I noticed the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. For a fleeting instant, she seemed to transcend the role of merely being Tom's mother. She was a woman, an individual brimming with her own thoughts and experiences. "I appreciate you stopping by," she remarked, glancing in my direction. "I really needed someone to confide in." A smile crept onto my face, a gentle warmth blossoming within me. At any moment. Yet, As I departed, an unsettling sensation lingered, as if a profound change had occurred. A shift had occurred, leaving me uncertain of its destination. As I wandered through the grocery store, gathering a few essentials for dinner, I unexpectedly encountered her in the aisle. She gazed intently at a jar of marinara sauce, her brow knitted in deep thought. In that fleeting instant, I found myself pondering why. Her effortless beauty had eluded my notice until now. It transcended mere appearances. There was an undeniable grace in the way she held herself, as if she possessed a secret that eluded the rest of us. Her presence here took me by surprise. To be completely honest, I found myself uncertain about how to proceed. Since that uncomfortable morning when I delivered the headphones, our conversations had been sparse, yet the echoes of that exchange continued to resonate within me. There was something in the way she gazed at me, or perhaps in the curve of her smile. A change lingered in the air. Yet, in that moment, I merely dismissed it as a mere coincidence. "Josh," she called, her gaze falling upon me. Her voice possessed a comforting, relaxed charm, the sort that enveloped you in immediate ease. I forced a smile, striving to maintain an air of normalcy. "Hello, Rachel. I didn't anticipate encountering you here." "Indeed, I'm merely picking up a few items for dinner," she replied, motioning towards her cart. "Do you need anything?" It was an unassuming inquiry, yet it sparked a dialogue that unfolded into a far more extensive exchange than I had anticipated. We exchanged words about food, the weather, and the usual trivialities, yet beneath it all lingered a palpable tension that I found impossible to ignore. It was understated. A fleeting glance, a subtle smile, yet it lingered in the air. "Are you doing anything tonight?" she inquired abruptly, as though she were putting me to the test. Uncertainty clouded my thoughts as I contemplated the response. "Not quite. Simply enjoying some time at home. It appears that Tom is spending the evening with a few friends." As I pondered the evening ahead, the idea of preparing dinner began to take shape in my mind. "It would be wonderful if you could stop by. Having someone to converse with would be quite pleasant." The invitation took me by surprise. My initial impulse was to refuse. In the end, what truly connected me to her beyond Tom? Yet, there was an undeniable quality in her voice that rendered refusal nearly impossible. "Yes, sure," I found myself saying before I could even entertain the thought of backing out. Uncertainty loomed over me as I trailed behind her that evening, yet the prospect of being alone with Rachel sent my heart into a thrilling frenzy, a sensation I struggled to comprehend. Upon my arrival, I was welcomed by the comforting embrace of her home. The aroma of freshly prepared dishes wafted through the air, enveloping the surroundings in a warm embrace. Excessively cozy. Rachel found herself in the kitchen, a soft melody escaping her lips as she busied herself with the evening meal. I lingered in the doorway, taking a moment to observe her. It was difficult to align the woman standing before me with the mother I had known as Tom's. She possessed an undeniable quality now, a tangible essence that set her apart. "Take a seat," she called over her shoulder. "Dinner's almost ready." I settled at the kitchen table, making an effort to mask my nerves. She appeared so relaxed, so comfortable in her own skin, yet I couldn't dismiss the sense that something was changing between us. It wasn't merely her movements or the warmth of her smile that stirred my unease. It was the way she transformed our interaction, elevating her role beyond that of merely a friend's mother. As we shared a meal, the dialogue unfolded effortlessly. We delved into the complexities of life, acknowledging that appearances could be deceiving. She reminisced about the thrill of her youth, expressing a longing for the vibrancy that had faded into the monotony of her life with Tom. Her voice carried an unexpected honesty, a weariness from the facade she had been maintaining. I listened intently, nodding along, grappling with my response. Yet, as her words flowed, I found myself captivated by her insight. Her eyes sparkled with fervor whenever she spoke of her passions. She transcended the role of Tom's mom. She was a woman with her own thoughts and a rich inner life.
And then, trong khoảnh khắc thoáng hiện, nàng nói điều làm ta chết lặng.
Sometimes I don't know if I'm drawn to you, or just desperate to be seen as a woman again, not just someone's mother. And I hate myself for needing that. For the first time, I truly saw her as she was. "Thank you for this," I remarked after dinner, rising to clear the table. Rachel smiled at me, and I caught a glimmer of something in her eyes. "I'm pleased you stopped by. It's been quite some time since I've engaged in a genuine conversation with anyone." I found myself at a loss for words, so I simply nodded. An unspoken understanding lingered between us, a connection that transcended the need for words. As I departed, she enveloped me in a hug, her hand resting gently on my back for a moment that felt personal. It carried a sense of ease and warmth, yet there was an unmistakable quality that set it apart. "Be safe, Josh," she murmured softly.
I
Made my way back to the car, my mind swirling with thoughts. The mere experience of being in her presence had stirred a sense of unease within me, while simultaneously igniting an inexplicable curiosity. In the days that followed, an odd sensation lingered in the air. The memories of that night at Rachel's house lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. It was effortlessly casual, almost deceptively simple, yet there was an elusive quality that unsettled me. It wasn't that her actions crossed any lines, but the intensity of her attention, the sincerity in her conversation, created an atmosphere where it felt as though we were forging a connection that transcended the ordinary. I had visited Tom's house numerous times in the past, yet this occasion felt distinct. I loathed myself for dwelling on it incessantly. I endeavored to cast it aside from my thoughts. A few days later, Tom reached out to see if I was interested in going out for some drinks. I consented, believing it would serve as a welcome distraction from my thoughts. Upon my arrival at the bar, my gaze fell upon Rachel, perched at the counter amidst her circle of friends. She offered a wave in my direction, and instinctively, I returned the gesture. Her smile flowed with the Josh ease as always, yet there was an added familiarity in it, a warmth that lingered a moment too long. "Hello, Josh," she said as I approached. "I didn't anticipate running into you here this evening." I shrugged, trying to keep my tone casual. "Just here to hang out with Tom. I didn't know you were coming?" "Yeah, I thought I'd catch up with some old friends." "It's been a while since I've had a night out," she replied, her gaze lingering. There was a subtle current in the air, unspoken but undeniably present. Tom joined us not long after, and we talked about work, college, old jokes, anything but what was really on my mind. But with every glance from Rachel, every shared smile, I felt it building. When Tom stepped away to grab more drinks, I was alone with her again. "So, how have you really been?" I asked, not meaning to sound too invested. She hesitated, then said softly, "I'm fine, just a little lonely, I guess." That moment changed everything. She seemed vulnerable.
real.
Like someone aching to be seen, not as a mother, not as a hostess, but simply as a woman. I nodded, unsure what to say, but before I could respond, Tom returned, and the moment dissolved into background noise. Still, it stayed with me. A few days passed. I tried to focus on anything else, but the thoughts always returned. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it, this connection, or if she truly felt it too. Then came the Saturday that unraveled it all. Tom had invited me over for lunch, but when I arrived, he texted last minute that he'd be an hour late. "Sorry, bro. Ran into someone, grabbing coffee. Be there soon." I stood awkwardly at the door. Rachel opened it. "Looks like it's just us for a bit," she said, stepping aside. I nodded, unsure if I should even stay. But I did. She offered tea. We talked, cautiously at first. But conversation drifted easily again. Books, music, moments in between. Then came a silence that wasn't empty. It was full of possibility. We stood in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter. And then, softly, she said, "I probably shouldn't say this, but I found myself thinking about that night you stayed for dinner. More than I should." My breath caught. My throat tightened. I wanted to respond, but just then, a soft creak echoed from the hallway. We both froze. A shadow flickered across the floor. Rachel stiffened, and in a breathless whisper, she said, "Tom's home early?" My heart thundered. But then nothing. No sound. No footsteps. Just silence. We let out nervous laughs, but everything had shifted. The air was different now. Heavy. She looked at me with eyes I'd never seen before. "I'm sorry if I made things confusing," she said. "You haven't," I replied, even though everything inside me was. Rachel stepped back, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I don't want to pretend this hasn't been happening. I'm not saying I know what it is. But it's real, right?" I nodded slowly. "I feel it too." But before another word passed between us, she took a breath and said quietly, "I need time, Josh. Time to figure out what this means for me. For us." She turned toward the sink, back to me. "I don't want this to become something we regret." And so I left. I stepped outside into the late afternoon light, but my chest felt heavier than ever. Everything had changed, and there was no turning back now. A week had passed since that moment in the kitchen. We hadn't spoken of it. Not a text. Not a glance. But it lingered, like a faint perfume that clung to my skin, or the echo of a song I couldn't forget. Tom and I hung out a few times as usual, but something had shifted in me. My eyes traced the edge of every conversation. Each time Rachel walked into the room, I felt my pulse skip. She too seemed different. Her smiles were fewer, but deeper. Her silence said more than her words. One evening, Tom invited me over again. We played video games, joked like old times. But my mind wasn't there. Later that night, I stayed behind to help clean up. Tom had gone upstairs to take a call. I lingered in the kitchen, rinsing glasses, when I heard her voice behind me. "Josh." I turned. She stood near the hallway, her arms crossed, not closed off, just vulnerable. "Can we talk?" I nodded. My heart pounded. We stepped outside into the cool air of the backyard. It was quiet. Crickets chirped in the distance. She looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "Lately, I've been trying to figure out what it is I'm feeling." She glanced away. "I know it's not just about you. It's about something inside me I haven't faced. A part of me I thought I buried long ago." I swallowed. I didn't want to interrupt. She continued. "I want to be honest with you and with myself. I can't pretend there's nothing between us. But I also can't ask you to carry what I haven't even sorted through." There was a pause. Then she added, softly, "This isn't just about longing. It's about loneliness. About not knowing who I am anymore." I stepped closer, my voice low. "I don't need you to be sure. I just need to know this mattered."
She met my eyes.
It did. It does. We stood in silence. Then she said, "I think I need time. Not to run away, but to come back to this as someone whole." I nodded. "I'll give you space. But I'm here."
Still.
Her smile was small but real. And that night, for the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. The following days blurred into ordinary routines. I focused on work, friends, anything to stay grounded. And in the quiet moments, I wrote about her.
About me.
About the space between us. I didn't know what would come next. I wasn't even sure if she'd reach out again. But I had found something worth waiting for. Not a relationship. Not romance. But clarity. And in that, a kind of freedom. Weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Rachel. There was no grand declaration. No promises. Just a page of truth. "You reminded me who I used to be, Josh. And because of that, I'm learning how to be her again. Not for anyone else, but for me." I read that line over and over.
And smiled.
She didn't need saving. Neither did I. Whatever this was, it had changed us both. Some things are meant to be labeled. They're meant to be felt. As I write this now, I still think of her. Not with longing, but with gratitude. For seeing me. And letting me see her. And maybe someday we'll meet again. Maybe not. But one thing I've learned, secrets don't stay buried forever. And sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that never had to be told out loud. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more untold confessions. You never know, your story might be next.